The morning sun streamed through the windows of Sunrise Cafe as I sat across from my 9-year-old grandson Owen and my daughter-in-law Julie. The familiar chatter of breakfast customers filled the air, but something felt off about this family gathering. Julie kept checking her phone every few minutes, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against the table. "Where's your father?" Julie asked Owen for the third time, her voice carrying that sharp edge I'd grown accustomed to over the years. "Dad said he'd be here by 9, Owen replied, stirring his hot chocolate with the focus only a child could muster. I glanced at my watch. 9:15. Spencer was always late these days, and Julie's frustration was becoming more obvious with each passing minute. As a retired civil engineer, punctuality had been drilled into me for 40 years, but my son seemed to have inherited none of that discipline. "There he is," Julie announced with forced cheerfulness as Spencer hurried through the cafe door, his hair disheveled and his shirt wrinkled. Sorry, Spencer mumbled, sliding into the booth next to his wife. Traffic was brutal on Highway 12. Julie's smile looked painted on. "We were just discussing the community fundraiser next month. Your father has been so generous with his support." I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. Over the past year, Julie had developed a habit of volunteering my financial assistance for various family projects and community events. Each time, she presented it as a done deal, leaving me little room to object without seeming petty or selfish. "The catering alone will cost $8,000, Julie continued. "But it's for such a good cause. The community center really needs those new computers for the children's programs." Spencer nodded absently while scrolling through his phone. "Dad's always been great about helping out. Remember when you covered the down payment for our kitchen renovation?" I remembered. I also remembered being told it was a temporary loan that would be paid back within 6 months. That was 14 months ago. "I need to use the restroom," Owen announced, sliding out of the booth. "I'll come with you," Spencer said, finally looking up from his phone. "Julie, you want to handle the check?" As they walked away, Julie immediately pulled out her credit card and headed to the counter. I sat alone at the table, watching the morning crowd thin out as people headed to work. That's when she appeared. A woman in her 50s with graying brown hair and tired eyes approached my table. She moved with purpose but kept glancing over her shoulder as if checking for someone. Before I could react, she slid a manila envelope across the table and leaned down close to my ear. "You'll need this tonight," she whispered urgently. I started to speak, but she was already walking away, disappearing into the crowd of customers near the entrance. The entire interaction lasted maybe 10 seconds, but my heart was pounding as if I'd just witnessed a crime. I quickly slipped the envelope inside my jacket just as Spencer and Owen returned from the restroom. "Ready to go, Dad?" Spencer asked, seemingly oblivious to anything unusual. "All paid for," Julie announced, returning to the table with a bright smile. "Marty, don't forget about the event planning meeting Thursday evening. We'll need to finalize the catering deposit." The drive to Spencer and Julie's house for our weekly family dinner felt longer than usual. The envelope pressed against my ribs like a guilty secret, and I couldn't shake the stranger's words from my mind. "You'll need this tonight." What could that possibly mean? Their suburban home looked perfect from the outside. Manicured lawn, fresh paint, expensive cars in the driveway. But I'd learned that appearances could be deceiving, especially when it came to my son's family. "Grandpa, want to see my new Lego set?" Owen asked as we entered the house. "After dinner, sweetheart," Julie interrupted smoothly. "I've prepared a wonderful roast, and we have so much to discuss about the fundraiser." The dining room table was set with Julie's best china, the kind that cost more than my first car. She'd always been particular about maintaining appearances, even for family dinners. "This looks incredible, Julie," I said, taking my usual seat. "Thank you, Marty. I've been experimenting with new recipes. Spencer's been working so hard lately, haven't you, honey?" Spencer looked up from his phone with a distracted nod. "Yeah, the Peterson account has been keeping me busy." I'd stopped asking specific questions about Spencer's work months ago. His answers were always vague, and Julie would quickly steer the conversation elsewhere. As someone who'd spent decades managing construction projects, I appreciated details and specifics. My son seemed allergic to both. "Tell me about this fundraiser," I said, cutting into the roast. "What exactly are we raising money for?" Julie's eyes lit up. "It's going to be the event of the year, Marty. We're calling it the Community Future Foundation Gala. The goal is to raise $50,000 for new technology and educational programs." "50,000?" I nearly choked on my food. "That's quite ambitious." "Oh, but we already have the main sponsor secured," Julie said with a meaningful look in my direction. "Someone very generous has agreed to underwrite the major expenses." The implication was clear. Somehow, without my explicit agreement, I'd become the primary financial backer for this event. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Grandpa, remember when you told me about building the bridge over Miller's Creek? Owen asked suddenly. That's a boring story, buddy, Spencer interrupted before I could respond. Why don't you tell Grandpa about your soccer game instead? I noticed how quickly Spencer shut down any conversation about my past work or experiences. It was as if my 40 years of engineering expertise were somehow embarrassing or irrelevant. Actually, I'd love to hear about the bridge, Julie said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Marty, you must have so many stories from your career. Well, the Miller's Creek project was particularly challenging because, speaking of challenges, Julie interrupted smoothly, we should discuss the timeline for the gala deposits. The venue requires payment by the end of this week. And there it was again, another financial commitment presented as a foregone conclusion. I felt the envelope pressing against my chest and wondered what secrets it might contain. After dinner, I helped Julie clear the dishes while Spencer retreated to his home office for what he called important calls. Owen had been sent upstairs to finish homework, leaving Julie and me alone in the kitchen. Marty, I hope you know how much we appreciate everything you do for this family, she said, loading the dishwasher with practiced efficiency. Of course, Julie. Family is important. It really is. And that's why I know you'll understand about the catering deposit. It's only $4,500, and it really needs to be paid by Friday. $4,500. Said so casually, as if it were pocket change. I thought about my monthly pension and the retirement savings I'd carefully managed for years. Each of these small requests was slowly eating away at the security I'd worked decades to build. I'll need to check my accounts, I said carefully. Of course, I have all the payment information right here. She handed me a folder with bank routing numbers and payment instructions already filled out. I took the liberty of preparing everything to make it easier for you. The presumption was staggering, but I kept my expression neutral. I'll take care of it. Driving home that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about the stranger's warning and the envelope hidden in my jacket. My modest ranch house felt unusually quiet as I unlocked the front door and turned on the lights. I sat in my favorite armchair and pulled out the manila envelope. It was unmarked except for my name written in careful block letters across the front. My hands trembled slightly as I turned it over, debating whether to open it. My phone buzzed with a text message from Julie. Don't forget about the catering deposit. The vendor needs payment by 5 p.m. Friday. Thanks again for making this possible. The heart emoji felt particularly manipulative. I stared at the message, then at the envelope in my hands. The stranger's words echoed in my mind. You'll need this tonight. I thought about the pattern that had emerged over the past year. The kitchen renovation loan that was never repaid, the temporary help with Spencer's car payment that had become permanent, the insurance premium I'd covered just this once, that had somehow become my ongoing responsibility. Each request had been presented as urgent, temporary, and absolutely necessary. Each time, I'd been made to feel selfish for even questioning the amount or timeline. And each time, Julie had all the paperwork ready, as if my agreement were guaranteed. Before I could change my mind, I tore open the envelope. Inside were photocopied documents, bank statements, contracts, payment receipts, and what appeared to be loan applications. At first glance, they seemed to be related to various community events and family expenses. But as I examined them more closely, a deep chill settled over me. There was my signature on documents I'd never seen before, bank account numbers I didn't recognize, and a brief, unsigned note paper-clipped to the front. Check who really signed these. My hands shook as I spread the papers across my coffee table. Someone had been using my name, my credit, and my financial information for months. And if these documents were authentic, the scope of the deception was far larger than I'd ever imagined. The stranger hadn't been delivering a threat. She'd been trying to save me. I spent most of the night examining the documents from the envelope, cross-referencing them with my own financial records. By dawn, a disturbing pattern had emerged. Several signatures that were supposed to be mine looked similar but had subtle differences. The way the M in Martin curved, the spacing in my last name, small details that most people wouldn't notice. The next morning, I called Julie to discuss the catering deposit, trying to keep my voice casual. "Oh, Marty, perfect timing," she answered on the first ring. "I was just about to call you. There's been a slight change in the payment schedule." "What kind of change?" "Well, the venue is requiring all deposits up front now instead of the payment plan we discussed. It's a bit more than we originally planned." My stomach tightened. "How much more?" $12,000 instead of $4,500. But don't worry, I've already set up the payment authorization. You just need to confirm it with the bank. $12,000. The amount had nearly tripled overnight, and once again, Julie had taken the initiative to help by preparing all the paperwork. "Julie, I need to think about this. That's a significant amount. Of course, I understand completely. But Marty, the thing is, if we don't pay by tomorrow, we lose the venue entirely, and I've already sent out invitations with the date and location. The familiar pressure was building, the urgency, the guilt, the implication that backing out would disappoint everyone. But this time, armed with the knowledge from the mysterious envelope, I recognized the manipulation. "Let me call you back," I said. "Oh, but Marty..." I hung up before she could continue her sales pitch. For the first time in months, I'd ended a conversation with Julie on my own terms. An hour later, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw my old friend Petra Kavanaugh holding a chess set and wearing a concerned expression. "Marty, you look terrible," she said as I opened the door. "Rough night?" Petra and I had been friends for over 20 years, ever since her late husband and I worked together on a municipal building project. She'd been a paralegal for 30 years before retiring, and her sharp legal mind had always impressed me. "You could say that. Want some coffee?" We settled in my living room with the chessboard between us, but I found myself distracted by the weight of the previous night's discoveries. "Petra, hypothetically speaking, if someone were forging another person's signature on financial documents, what would that be called legally?" She paused with a chess piece halfway to the board. "That would be fraud, Marty. Possibly identity theft, depending on the scope. Why do you ask?" I hesitated, then decided to trust my oldest friend. I retrieved some of the photocopied documents from the envelope and showed her the signature comparisons I'd made. Petra studied them with the intensity she'd once brought to legal briefs. After several minutes, she looked up with a grim expression. "Marty, these aren't even good forgeries. See how the pressure is different here? And the pen angle is completely wrong. Whoever did this was either very careless or assumed no one would ever examine them closely. What should I do? First, we need to verify these documents are legitimate. Second, you need to check every account, every credit report, every financial record you have. And third, you need to be very careful about who you trust." That afternoon, I drove to Spencer and Julie's house for what was supposed to be a casual lunch. Julie greeted me at the door with her usual bright smile, but I noticed how her eyes immediately went to the envelope in my hand. "What's that, Marty?" "Just some paperwork I need Spencer to look at," I said, keeping my voice light. "Oh, you know how busy he is. Maybe I could help instead." The eagerness in her voice was telling. "That's okay. I'll wait for Spencer." Lunch was an uncomfortable affair. Julie kept steering the conversation back to the fundraiser while I deflected with questions about Owen's school and Spencer's work. Every time I asked for specifics, one of them would change the subject. "Dad, about that catering deposit," Spencer finally said as Julie served dessert. "Julie mentioned you had some concerns?" "I'm just trying to understand the timeline. Yesterday it was $4,500 by Friday. This morning it became $12,000 by tomorrow." Spencer and Julie exchanged a quick glance that they probably thought I missed. "Yeah, the venue had some policy changes," Spencer said. "But you know how these things are. If we want the prime date, we have to move fast." "Have you seen the actual contract with the venue?" Another glance between them. "Julie handles all that stuff. She's much better with details than I am." After lunch, I asked to speak with Spencer privately. We went out to his garage where he was restoring a classic Mustang, a project that had been almost finished for 3 years. "Son, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Spencer's body language immediately became defensive. "What's wrong, Dad?" "Have you or Julie ever used my name on any financial documents without asking me first?" The color drained from his face. "What? No, of course not. Why would you even ask that?" "Because I've been reviewing my financial records, and there are some discrepancies." "Dad, you're 67 years old. Maybe you just forgot about some things?" The suggestion that my memory was failing stung, especially since my mind was as sharp as it had ever been. But I also recognized it as a deflection tactic. "I remember everything, Spencer. Every loan, every payment, every signature. Look, maybe there were some administrative errors with the bank or something. These things happen. But accusing Julie and me of fraud? That's pretty harsh, Dad." I hadn't used the word fraud, but Spencer had. The fact that his mind went there immediately told me everything I needed to know. That evening, I received an email that sent a chill straight through me. It was from the community center's event coordinator, thanking me for booking their main hall for the fundraiser and confirming the payment schedule for the Hallberg Community Foundation Gala. I had never booked anything. I had never heard of the Hallberg Community Foundation. And I certainly had never authorized the use of my name for any foundation. I immediately called the community center. "Oh yes, Mr. Hallberg," the coordinator said cheerfully. Your daughter-in-law, Julie, set everything up. She said you preferred to handle the business side quietly. We have you down as the primary sponsor and featured speaker. Featured speaker. I was apparently giving a speech at an event I knew nothing about, for a foundation that didn't exist, funded with money I hadn't agreed to donate. I called Petra immediately. This is worse than we thought, she said, after I explained the latest developments. They're not just forging your signature, they're creating entire fictional entities using your name and reputation. What's my next move? We need to document everything, every phone call, every email, every conversation, and we need to start quietly protecting your assets before this gets worse. You think it will get worse? Marty, if they're willing to create a fake foundation and forge your signature, there's no telling how deep this goes. We need to assume the worst and hope for the best. After hanging up with Petra, I sat in my quiet house and thought about the family dinner just 2 nights ago. Julie's casual mention of the generous sponsor, Spencer's distracted behavior, Owen's innocent questions about my past that were quickly shut down. How long had they been planning this? How many other documents bore my forged signature? And most importantly, what was their endgame? I locked the envelope of evidence in my desk drawer and set my alarm for early morning. Tomorrow I would start fighting back. But tonight I needed to process the fact that my own family had been systematically stealing from me for months. The stranger who had delivered the envelope had risked something to warn me. I didn't know who she was or why she cared, but her courage had opened my eyes to a betrayal I might never have discovered on my own. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, my phone buzzed with another text from Julie. Just wanted to confirm you'll take care of the deposit tomorrow. The vendor is so excited to work with the Hallberg Foundation. Sweet dreams. The heart emoji felt like a knife twist. But this time, instead of feeling guilty or pressured, I felt something else entirely, determination. The next morning, I drove to the public library downtown. I needed to use their computers to check my credit reports and financial records without leaving a digital trail on my home computer. If Julie and Spencer were monitoring my online activity, I didn't want to tip them off about my investigation. The librarian, a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, whom I'd known for years, helped me set up at one of the computer terminals in a quiet corner. "Doing some research, Marty?" she asked. "Something like that," I replied, not wanting to involve her in my family drama. What I discovered over the next 2 hours made me physically sick. There were credit inquiries I hadn't authorized, a joint checking account I'd never opened, and most disturbing of all, a home equity loan application that showed my house as collateral. According to the credit report, I had apparently applied for a $75,000 loan just 3 weeks ago. The application showed my signature, my social security number, and my financial information. But I had never seen this document before in my life. My hands trembled as I printed out the credit reports and loan documents. The scope of the fraud was far beyond what I'd imagined. This wasn't just about catering deposits or event planning. Someone was systematically stealing my identity and putting my home at risk. I called the bank that had issued the loan application. "Mr. Hallberg," the loan officer said cheerfully, "I was just about to call you. Your application has been approved. We can close on the loan as early as next week." "I never applied for any loan," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause. "Sir, I have your signed application right here, along with all your financial documentation. Your daughter-in-law, Julie, brought everything in personally and said you preferred to handle the details by phone due to your mobility issues." Mobility issues. They had told the bank I was somehow incapacitated or unable to handle my own affairs. The lies were becoming more elaborate and more dangerous. "I need to see that application immediately," I said. "Of course, sir. Would you like me to mail it to your address on file?" I gave them my address and hung up, feeling dizzy with anger and betrayal. My own family had not only forged my signature, but had also painted me as an invalid who couldn't manage his own business. My phone rang. It was Julie. "Marty, I've been trying to reach you all morning. The catering company needs that deposit today, or we'll lose everything." "Julie, I need to ask you about something. Did you recently visit First National Bank on my behalf?" Silence. Then, "Oh, that. Yes, I was helping you with some paperwork. You mentioned wanting to look into a home equity loan for some improvements. Remember?" I had never mentioned anything of the sort. "What kind of improvements?" "Well, updating your kitchen, maybe adding a ramp for accessibility as you get older, just being proactive about your future needs." The casual way she lied was almost more shocking than the lies themselves. She had an answer for everything, delivered with the confidence of someone who had practiced these explanations. "I never asked you to apply for any loan, Julie." "Oh, Marty, you must have forgotten. We discussed it at dinner last month. Spencer was there too. Maybe you should talk to your doctor about your memory." again with the suggestion that my memory was failing. It was a calculated attempt to make me doubt my own recollections and experiences. My memory is fine, Julie. Cancel that loan application immediately. I can't do that, Marty. You're the primary applicant. But why would you want to cancel it? The interest rate is excellent, and you said yourself that you wanted to help with Owen's college fund. Another lie. I had never discussed Owen's college fund in the context of taking out loans against my house. We'll discuss this later, I said, and hung up. I drove directly to First National Bank and requested to speak with the loan officer who had handled my application. Mr. Peterson was a young man in his 30s who seemed genuinely confused by my presence. Mr. Hallberg, I wasn't expecting to see you in person. Your daughter-in-law said you had difficulty getting around. As you can see, I get around just fine. I'd like to see the loan application you mentioned. He pulled out a thick file folder and handed me the application. There was my signature at the bottom, but it was clearly forged. The handwriting in the application form wasn't mine either. Mr. Peterson, this signature is not mine, and I never filled out this application. His face went pale. Sir, are you saying this is fraudulent? That's exactly what I'm saying. I need this loan application canceled immediately, and I want a copy of everything in that file. Of course, sir. I'll need to involve our security department and possibly law enforcement. Not yet, I said. Give me 24 hours to sort some things out with my family first. I left the bank with copies of all the fraudulent documents and a sick feeling in my stomach. The home equity loan was for $75,000, more than enough to wipe out most of my retirement savings if something went wrong. That afternoon, I met Petra at her apartment. She lived in a tidy senior community about 10 minutes from my house, and her place was filled with legal books and crossword puzzles. This is organized crime, Marty, she said after reviewing the bank documents. They've created a systematic plan to steal your identity and assets. But they're my family. That makes it worse, not better. They're using your trust and love against you. Petra pulled out a yellow legal pad and started making notes. We need to move quickly. If that loan goes through, they could potentially force you to sell your house to pay it back. How is that possible? Home equity loans use your house as collateral. If you default, or if they default using your name, the bank can foreclose. The reality hit me all at once. I could lose the house I'd lived in for 25 years, the home where I'd raised Spencer after his mother passed away, the place where all my memories lived. What do I do? First, we contact the credit agencies and put a fraud alert on your accounts. Second, we change all your banking passwords and remove any authorized users. Third, we document everything for potential legal action. Legal action against my own son? Petra's expression softened. Marty, I know this is heartbreaking, but Spencer is an adult who made a choice to participate in this fraud. You didn't create this situation. They did. That evening, I received a call from someone named Nadine Yao, who identified herself as an event manager at the community center. Mr. Hallberg, I'm calling about the Hallberg Foundation Gala next month. We need to finalize the catering numbers and confirm the final payment schedule. Ms. Yao, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not organizing any gala. Oh, but sir, your daughter-in-law Julie has been working with us for weeks. She said you preferred to handle the financial arrangements directly. We have you listed as the primary sponsor and keynote speaker. Keynote speaker. I was apparently giving a speech about a foundation that didn't exist at an event I'd never authorized, funded with money I'd never agreed to donate. What's the total cost of this event? Well, with catering, venue rental, entertainment, and decorations, we're looking at about $35,000. But Julie said that was well within the foundation's budget. $35,000. Not the $12,000 Julie had mentioned, but nearly 3 times that amount. The lies were getting bigger and more expensive by the day. Ms. Yao, I need to see all the contracts and payment schedules for this event. Certainly, sir. Should I email them to you? Yes, and please don't make any more arrangements or accept any more payments without speaking to me directly first. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen and tried to process the magnitude of what I'd discovered. The catering deposit was just the tip of the iceberg. There was a $75,000 home equity loan, a $35,000 event that didn't exist, and God knows what other financial commitments made in my name. My phone buzzed with a text from Spencer. Dad, Julie said you were asking questions about the loan application. She's really hurt that you don't trust her after everything she's done for the family. The manipulation was breathtaking. Somehow I was the bad guy for discovering their fraud. I was the one hurting people by asking questions about my own financial records. I typed back, "We need to talk, all 3 of us, tomorrow." The response came quickly. "Can't tomorrow, maybe next week?" Of course. When it came time for accountability, Spencer was suddenly too busy to meet, but when they needed money, the timeline was always urgent and non-negotiable. I forwarded all of Nadine's emails to Petra and called her. 35,000? She said after reading the event contracts. Marty, this isn't just fraud anymore. This is a full-scale financial scam using your name and reputation. What's the worst-case scenario here? If all these loans and commitments go through, you could be looking at over $100,000 in debt and obligations you never agreed to. They could bankrupt you. I hung up and walked through my quiet house, looking at 40 years of accumulated memories. Family photos with Spencer as a child, his high school graduation picture, his wedding photo with Julie, where they both looked so happy and hopeful. Had they planned this from the beginning, or had it started small and grown into something monstrous? Either way, the family I thought I knew was gone, replaced by strangers who saw me as nothing more than a source of money to be exploited. Tomorrow, I would start fighting back in earnest. But tonight, I mourned the loss of the son I thought I'd raised and the daughter-in-law I thought I'd welcomed into our family. The envelope from the mysterious stranger had contained more than just evidence of fraud. It had contained the truth about who my family really was, and that truth was more devastating than any financial loss could ever be. I woke up early and drove to the wash-and-go car wash on the outskirts of town. It might seem odd, but some of my clearest thinking happened while watching the mechanical brushes work their way across my windshield. The rhythmic process helped me organize my thoughts and plan my next moves. Sitting in my car as soap suds covered the windows, I mentally rehearsed the conversation I needed to have with Spencer and Julie. I couldn't let emotion drive my decisions, no matter how betrayed I felt. This required the same methodical approach I'd used to solve engineering problems for 4 decades. After the car wash, I drove to Riverside Park, where Owen and I often took walks together. The morning joggers were out, and the familiar sight of families with young children reminded me of better times with my own family. My phone rang. It was Spencer. Dad, we need to talk. Julie is really upset about yesterday. Good. We do need to talk. Can you both come to my house this afternoon? Actually, why don't you come here? Julie's making her famous pot roast, and Owen would love to see you. The suggestion that we meet at their house, on their territory, was strategic. They wanted the home field advantage. But I'd learned enough about their tactics to recognize the manipulation. My house, Spencer, 2 o'clock. Dad, that's not really convenient for... 2 o'clock, I repeated, and hung up. I spent the morning with Petra, finalizing the legal documents we'd need to protect my assets. She'd prepared a power of attorney revocation, notifications to all my banks, and fraud alerts for the credit agencies. Oh, once you file these, there's no going back, Petra warned. This will essentially declare war on Spencer and Julie. They declared war on me first. I'm just finally fighting back. At exactly 2 o'clock, Spencer and Julie arrived at my house. Julie carried a plate of homemade cookies, and Spencer had brought Owen along, clearly hoping that the presence of my grandson would keep the conversation civil. Grandpa! Owen ran to me with a huge smile. Mom made chocolate chip cookies. That's wonderful, buddy. Why don't you go play in the backyard while I talk to your parents? Can't I stay? I like grown-up conversations. Not this one, Spencer said quickly, ushering Owen toward the back door. We'll just be a few minutes. Once Owen was outside, the atmosphere in the room changed immediately. Julie's smile disappeared, and Spencer's body language became defensive. Dad, I think there's been a misunderstanding, Spencer began. The only misunderstanding is that you thought I wouldn't find out, I replied, pulling out the folder of evidence I'd compiled. I spread the forged loan applications, the fraudulent event contracts, and the bank statements across my coffee table. Julie's face went white when she saw the documents. Where did you get those? She asked. Does it matter? What matters is that you've been forging my signature and using my identity to steal money. We haven't stolen anything, Spencer protested. Everything we've done has been to help the family. Help the family by taking out a $75,000 loan against my house without my knowledge? Julie found her voice. Marty, you're getting older. We were just trying to be proactive about your financial planning. By lying to banks about my mental capacity, by telling them I have mobility issues. We never said, Spencer started. I spoke to the loan officer, Spencer. He told me exactly what Julie said about my condition. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Owen playing in the backyard. I could see them calculating their next move, trying to figure out how much I knew and what their options were. Look, Dad, maybe we made some mistakes in how we handled things, Spencer finally said, but our hearts were in the right place. Your hearts were in my bank account. Julie stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to these accusations. Come on, Spencer, let's go. Sit down, Julie. We're not finished. Something in my tone made her freeze. For the first time since I'd known her, Julie looked genuinely afraid. I've already contacted the banks and canceled all unauthorized applications, I continued. I've also put fraud alerts on all my accounts and removed both of you as authorized users. You can't do that, Julie snapped. I have bills to pay, commitments to meet. Commitments you made using my name and my money without my permission. Spencer looked like he was about to cry. Dad, if you cancel everything now, we'll lose the house. Your house? The mortgage payment, the car loans, Owen's school tuition, it's all connected to the credit lines we set up. The truth was finally coming out. They hadn't just been stealing from me for a few months. They'd built their entire lifestyle around fraudulent access to my credit and assets. How long has this been going on, Spencer? He couldn't meet my eyes. A couple of years, maybe 3. 3 years. My son had been systematically defrauding me for 3 years, and I'd been too trusting to notice. The kitchen renovation loan that was never paid back? We used your credit for that too, Julie admitted, but we've been making the payments. Using what money? Silence. You've been using my money to make payments on loans you took out in my name. Do you understand how insane that is? Owen appeared at the back door. Can I come in now? I'm bored. Just a few more minutes, sweetheart, Julie called out, her voice artificially cheerful. I lowered my voice so Owen wouldn't hear. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to cancel this fake foundation gala immediately. You're going to contact every business and vendor and explain that there's been a mistake. We can't do that, Spencer said. People are expecting. I don't care what people are expecting. This ends now. And if we refuse? Julie asked defiantly. Then I file fraud charges with the police and let them sort it out. The threat hung in the air like smoke. I could see Julie's mind working, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. You wouldn't do that to your own son, she said. Try me. Spencer stood up and started pacing. Dad, there has to be another way. If this comes out, I'll lose my job, maybe go to jail. What about Owen? The mention of my grandson hit me hard. Owen was innocent in all of this, but he would suffer the consequences of his parents' actions. You should have thought about Owen before you decided to commit fraud, I said, though the words felt like glass in my throat. Julie pulled out her phone. I'm calling our lawyer. Go ahead. But remember, I have all the evidence of forgery and fraud. What do you have? She put the phone down without dialing. Owen knocked on the back door again. Grandpa, can I please come in? I want to show you something. Come on in, buddy, I called out. Owen bounded into the room with a drawing he'd made. Look, Grandpa, it's our whole family. The crayon drawing showed stick figures of all of us standing in front of a house with a big yellow sun overhead and the words, I love my family, written across the top in a child's careful handwriting. The innocence of the drawing was heartbreaking given the conversation we'd just been having. Owen had no idea that his parents were criminals or that his grandfather was about to destroy the only family he'd ever known. It's beautiful, Owen, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You can keep it, Grandpa. I made it special for you. Spencer and Julie watched this exchange with growing desperation. They knew that Owen was their trump card, the one thing that might make me reconsider my ultimatum. Dad, Spencer said quietly, please, think about what this will do to Owen. I looked at my grandson's innocent face, then at his parents who had betrayed my trust so completely. The choice was impossible. Protect myself and potentially destroy Owen's family, or let the fraud continue and enable their criminal behavior. I need 24 hours to think about this, I finally said. What happens in 24 hours? Julie asked. I decide whether to call the police or give you one chance to make this right. And what would making it right look like? Spencer asked. Full confession, complete financial disclosure, repayment plan for everything you've stolen, and counseling for both of you. That's impossible, Julie said. We don't have that kind of money. Then you shouldn't have spent mine. They left a few minutes later, taking Owen and his drawing with them. I stood at my front window and watched their car disappear down the street, wondering if I'd ever see my grandson again. The house felt emptier than usual that evening. I called Petra and told her about the confrontation. How do you feel? She asked. Like I just declared war on my own family. Marty, they declared war on you 3 years ago. You just finally started fighting back. That night, I sat in my armchair holding Owen's drawing and thinking about the impossible choice ahead of me. I could protect myself and potentially send my son to jail, or I could protect my family and become a victim of their ongoing fraud. Either way, the family I'd thought I had was already gone. The only question now was whether I had the courage to admit it. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Owen's innocent face and his drawing of our happy family. By morning, I'd made my decision. though it felt like choosing between two different kinds of heartbreak. I spent the early hours organizing every piece of evidence I'd collected: the forged loan applications, the fraudulent event contracts, the bank statements, and the credit reports. I made copies of everything and stored the originals in my safety deposit box at the bank. At 9 o'clock, I called Nadine Yao at the community center. "Ms. Yao, this is Martin Halberg. I need to cancel the foundation gala immediately." "Cancel?" "But Mr. Halberg, we're only 2 weeks away from the event. We've already ordered the catering, hired the entertainment, sent out invitations. I understand this is inconvenient, but there is no Halberg Foundation, and I never authorized this event." There was a long pause. "Sir, I'm confused. Your daughter-in-law has been working with us for months. She's made deposits, signed contracts. Using forged signatures and fraudulent information, I'll be happy to provide documentation to your legal department." "Oh my God! Are you saying this is some kind of fraud?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. I'll come by this afternoon with the evidence." After hanging up with Nadine, I called the catering company, the entertainment booking agency, and the invitation printing service. Each conversation was more uncomfortable than the last, but I methodically canceled every aspect of the fake gala. My phone started ringing almost immediately. It was Julie. "Marty, what have you done? The community center just called and said you canceled everything." "I told you yesterday this had to stop. But the invitations have already been sent. People are expecting an event that was planned with stolen money and forged signatures. Let them be disappointed. You're destroying Spencer's reputation in this community. Spencer destroyed his own reputation when he decided to commit fraud." I hung up and turned off my phone. I needed a few hours of peace to prepare for what was coming next. That afternoon, I drove to Petra's apartment with a complete copy of all the evidence. She'd been researching the legal implications of the fraud, and her findings were sobering. "If you pursue criminal charges, Spencer could face up to 5 years in federal prison," she said. "The amount of money involved pushes this into felony territory." "And if I don't?" "They'll see your hesitation as weakness and probably escalate their activities. Marty, people who commit this kind of systematic fraud don't usually stop on their own." I thought about Owen and his drawing. "What about my grandson?" "That's the hardest part. But consider this. If you don't stop them now, Owen will grow up watching his parents commit crimes. Is that the example you want him to learn?" She had a point. By enabling Spencer and Julie's behavior, I might be teaching Owen that fraud and manipulation were acceptable ways to solve financial problems. "There's something else," Petra continued. "I did some research on Julie's background. Did you know she was fired from her previous job for financial irregularities?" I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "What kind of irregularities?" "Misappropriation of client funds. The company didn't press charges, but they terminated her immediately and flagged her employment record." "Spencer never told me any of this." "He probably doesn't know. Julie has been very careful about hiding her past." So this wasn't Julie's first time committing fraud. She'd done this before, and she'd probably do it again if I didn't stop her. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. Spencer arrived alone without Julie or Owen. "Dad, we need to talk." He looked terrible, unshaven, exhausted, and defeated. I let him in, and we sat in my living room where we'd had so many better conversations over the years. "I know you're angry," he began, "and you have every right to be." "Do I?" "Yes. What we did was wrong. I know that now." For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Spencer was finally ready to take responsibility for his actions. "Tell me how this started," I said. Spencer ran his hands through his hair. "It was small stuff at first. Julie would say we needed help with a bill, and she'd ask if you could co-sign for something. Then she started saying it would be easier if she just handled the paperwork." "And you let her?" "I was working 60-hour weeks trying to keep up with the mortgage and car payments. Julie said she was good with financial stuff, and it seemed like she was helping." "When did you realize she was forging my signature?" Spencer's face crumpled. "About 6 months ago. I saw her practicing your signature on a piece of paper. When I confronted her, she said it was just to save time, that you'd already agreed to everything anyway." "And you believed that?" "I wanted to believe it. Dad, we were drowning. The house payment, Owen's school, my credit card debt from when I was unemployed. Julie said this was just temporary until we got back on our feet." I could see the pain in my son's eyes, but I also heard the excuses and justifications. Even now, he was trying to shift responsibility to circumstances rather than choices. "Spencer, you've been stealing from me for 3 years. I know, and I hate myself for it." "Hating yourself doesn't fix what you've done." What if we paid it all back? Every penny with interest. With what money? You just told me you were drowning financially. I could get a second job, sell the car, downsize the house. That would take years, assuming you could even stick to a payment plan. Spencer started crying. Dad, I'm scared. If this comes out, I'll lose everything. My job, my house, maybe my family. You should have thought about that before you forged my signature. I know, but please, there has to be another way. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised alone after his mother passed away, and felt my heart breaking. But I also thought about the calculated nature of the scheme, Julie's past run-ins with the law, and the likelihood that it would continue if I didn't take action. Spencer, I want to help you, but I can't enable this behavior anymore. What does that mean? It means you have 24 hours to confess everything to the police and the banks. If you don't, I will. Dad, please. 24 hours. That's my final offer. Spencer left without another word. I sat in my empty house and wondered if I'd just lost my son forever. But I also knew that the alternative, continuing to be victimized by my own family, wasn't really living at all. The next morning, I woke up to find my front yard covered with toilet paper and my mailbox knocked over. Someone had also spray-painted "Family Destroyer" across my garage door. The message was clear. Spencer and Julie were not going quietly. I called Petra and told her about the vandalism. That's intimidation, Marty. You need to document this and report it to the police. I know who did it. Probably, but you need an official record in case this escalates. As I was cleaning up the toilet paper, my neighbor Mrs. Ventor came over with a concerned expression. Marty, what happened here? Just some kids playing pranks, I said, not wanting to involve her in my family drama. This doesn't look like a prank. Should I call the police? I'll handle it, Mrs. Ventor, but thank you. She studied my face carefully. Marty, if you need help, you know you can ask. Her kindness almost broke my resolve. For a moment, I wanted to tell her everything about the fraud, the betrayal, the impossible choice between justice and family, but I just nodded and continued cleaning up the mess. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. Mr. Hallberg, this is Detective Sylvie Ravlin with the County Fraud Division. I understand you'd like to file a complaint? I hadn't called the police yet, which meant someone else had. Either Spencer had decided to confess, or Julie was trying to get ahead of the story by painting herself as a victim. Detective Ravlin, I think there may be some confusion. I haven't filed any complaint yet. Sir, we received a call this morning from a Julie Hallberg claiming that someone was using her father-in-law's identity to commit fraud. She said the family was very concerned about your mental state. The audacity was breathtaking. Julie was trying to frame me for the crimes she had committed, using the same mental capacity lies she'd told the banks. Detective, I think you need to hear the real story. I'd like that very much, sir. Can you come to the station this afternoon? I'll be there at 2 o'clock. After hanging up, I called Petra and told her about the detective's call. They're trying to control the narrative, she said, but this might actually work in our favor. Now you can present your evidence to law enforcement without looking vindictive. What should I bring? Everything. Every document, every piece of evidence, every record of the fraud. And Marty? Yes? Once you walk into that police station, there's no going back. Are you ready for that? I thought about Owen's drawing, still sitting on my kitchen table. I thought about the 3 years of systematic theft, the forged signatures, and the spray paint on my garage door. I'm ready. The calm before the storm was over. It was time for the reckoning. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into the county police station carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would either vindicate me or destroy what was left of my family. Detective Ravlin was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who listened intently as I laid out the entire story of fraud and betrayal. Mr. Hallberg, these are serious allegations, she said after reviewing the documents, but I have to tell you, your daughter-in-law painted a very different picture this morning. What did she say? She claimed that you've been showing signs of dementia and that someone, possibly a caregiver or financial advisor, has been manipulating you into making accusations against your family. The lie was so elaborate and convincing that I almost admired Julie's creativity. She'd turned my discovery of her crimes into evidence of my mental decline. Detective, do I seem mentally impaired to you? She smiled slightly. No, sir. You seem quite sharp. And these documents you've provided are very well organized. What happens next? We'll need to investigate both versions of events. I'll be contacting the banks, the community center, and anyone else involved in these transactions. How long will that take? A few days, maybe a week. In the meantime, I'd recommend you avoid contact with Spencer and Julie until we sort this out. I left the police station feeling simultaneously relieved and terrified. The wheels of justice were finally turning, but I had no idea where they would stop. That evening, I received a call from Nadine at the community center. Mr. Halberg, I wanted to give you a heads up. The story about the canceled gala is starting to spread around town. People are asking questions. What kind of questions? Well, some folks are saying your daughter-in-law told them you've been having memory problems and that's why the event was canceled. But others remember you from your engineering days and find that hard to believe. So Julie was already working on damage control, spreading the dementia story throughout the community. But apparently some people who knew me weren't buying it. Nadine, what do you think? Honestly, I've worked with a lot of families dealing with elderly relatives, and you don't fit the pattern. When you called to cancel the gala, you knew specific details about contracts and payments that someone with dementia wouldn't remember. Thank you for saying that. Mr. Halberg, can I ask you something? Of course. Was this whole foundation thing a scam from the beginning? I hesitated, then decided she deserved the truth. Yes, and I'm sorry you got caught up in it. Don't apologize to me. I'm just glad we found out before the event actually happened. Can you imagine the embarrassment for everyone involved? 3 days later, Detective Ravelin called with an update. Mr. Halberg, we've completed our preliminary investigation. The evidence strongly supports your version of events. What did you find? Forged signatures on multiple documents, fraudulent loan applications, and a pattern of identity theft going back several years. We'll be filing charges against both Spencer and Julie. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting them. My son was going to be arrested. What happens now? We'll issue warrants today. They'll probably be arrested tomorrow morning. Detective, what about my grandson? He's only 9 years old. Child Services will evaluate the situation. If there are other family members who can take temporary custody, that would be preferable to foster care. Other family members. Julie's parents lived in Florida and barely knew Owen. My ex-wife's sister lived in California and hadn't spoken to our family in years. I was essentially Owen's only local relative. Could I take custody of Owen? Possibly, but that would be ironic, given that his parents are being arrested for stealing from you. He's innocent in all of this. I understand, sir. We'll do our best to minimize the impact on the child. The next morning, I was drinking coffee in my kitchen when I heard sirens in the distance. They grew louder as they approached my neighborhood, and my stomach clenched as I realized they were heading towards Spencer's house. I resisted the urge to drive over and watch my son be arrested. Instead, I sat in my quiet house and tried to process the fact that I just destroyed my family in order to save myself. My phone rang. It was Owen. "Grandpa, the police came to our house and took Mommy and Daddy away," he sobbed into the phone. "I'm scared." "Where are you now, buddy?" "With Mrs. Peterson next door. She said I could call you." "I'll be right there." I drove to Spencer's house to find police cars in the driveway and Owen sitting on the neighbor's front porch, clutching a stuffed animal and crying. The sight of my grandson's confusion and fear almost broke my resolve entirely. "Grandpa!" He ran to me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "What's happening? And why did the police take Mommy and Daddy?" How do you explain fraud and betrayal to a 9-year-old? How do you tell a child that his parents are criminals without destroying his entire worldview? "There's been a misunderstanding about some grown-up business stuff," I said carefully. "Your parents need to sort it out with the police." "Are they coming home today?" "I don't know, buddy, but you're going to stay with me for a while, okay? Can I bring my toys?" "Of course." Mrs. Peterson, the neighbor, approached us with a sympathetic expression. "Mr. Halberg, I'm so sorry about all this. Owen can stay with us if you need time to sort things out." "Thank you, but I'll take care of him." The police said someone from Child Services would be by later to check on him. I spent the rest of the day helping Owen pack his clothes and toys while trying to explain why his world had just collapsed. He asked innocent questions that cut like knives. Did Mommy and Daddy do something bad? Are you mad at them? Will they still love me? That evening, a social worker named Ms. Merrick came to my house to evaluate Owen's living situation. "Mr. Halberg, I understand you're the victim in this fraud case?" "Yes, but Owen is my grandson. He has nothing to do with his parents' crimes." "I'm not questioning your love for the child, sir, but this is an unusual situation. Usually we don't place children with the victims of their parents' crimes." "Where else would he go?" "We're exploring other options with extended family members. I'm his family. I've been part of his life since the day he was born." Ms. Merrick spent an hour interviewing Owen and inspecting my house. Finally, she rendered her decision. We'll approve temporary custody with you, Mr. Halberg, but there will be regular check-ins and the situation will be re-evaluated as the legal case progresses. After she left, Owen and I sat on my couch eating pizza and watching cartoons, trying to pretend this was just a normal sleepover, but I could see the confusion and sadness in his eyes. Grandpa, are Mommy and Daddy in jail? I'd been dreading this question all day. Yes, buddy, they are. Because of the grown-up business stuff? Yes. Will they get out? I hope so, but it might take a while. Owen was quiet for a long time, then asked the question that shattered my heart. Did I do something wrong? Oh, Owen, no. None of this is your fault. Your parents made some bad choices, but that has nothing to do with you. Then why do I feel so bad? Because you love them. And when people we love make mistakes, it hurts us too. 2 weeks later, Spencer and Julie were released on bail pending trial. They were forbidden from contacting me directly, but Spencer called and asked if he could see Owen. I agreed to supervised visits at a neutral location, the public library where Owen and I often went together. The first meeting was heartbreaking. Owen ran to his father with pure joy, while Spencer broke down crying and apologized over and over for the mess he'd made. Julie was less remorseful. She sat stiffly in her chair and told Owen that Grandpa had misunderstood some things, and that everything would be sorted out soon. Even facing criminal charges, she couldn't admit what she'd done. After the visit, Owen was quiet on the drive home. Grandpa, why was Daddy crying? Because he's sad about the mistakes he made. Will you forgive him? The question caught me off guard. In all my focus on justice and consequences, I hadn't really thought about forgiveness. I don't know yet, buddy. Forgiveness is complicated when someone hurts you badly. But you still love him, right? Even though he did bad things? Out of the mouths of babes. Yes, Owen, I still love him. Then maybe you can forgive him later, when you're not so sad anymore. 6 months later, Spencer pled guilty to fraud and identity theft. He received 2 years in prison and was ordered to pay restitution. Julie, with her history of financial crimes, received 4 years. The day Spencer was sentenced, I sat in the courtroom and watched my son be led away in handcuffs. He looked back at me one time, and I saw the boy I'd raised alongside the man who'd betrayed me. The complexity of those emotions, love and disappointment, grief and relief, would take years to untangle. Owen adjusted to living with me better than I'd expected. He started at a new school closer to my house, made friends in the neighborhood, and slowly began to heal from the trauma of his parents' arrest. We established new routines, homework at the kitchen table, bedtime stories in the guest room that became his room, weekend trips to the park where he'd once walked with me as a small child. One evening, about a year after everything happened, Owen was doing homework while I cooked dinner. He looked up from his math worksheet and said, "Grandpa, I'm glad I live with you now." Really? You don't miss your old house? I miss Mommy and Daddy, but living here feels safe. Safe. That one word encapsulated everything I'd been trying to provide for him. The security and stability his parents had destroyed with their crimes. I'm glad you feel safe here, buddy. Grandpa, can I ask you something? Of course. When Mommy and Daddy get out of jail, will they be different? It was a profound question from a 10-year-old. Would prison change Spencer and Julie? Would they learn from their mistakes, or would they simply become more careful criminals? I hope so, Owen. I really hope so. Me too, because I love them, but I don't want them to do bad things anymore. That's very wise. Grandpa? Yes? Thank you for taking care of me when everything got scary. I had to turn away from him to hide my tears. This child, who'd lost everything because of his parents' greed and my pursuit of justice, was thanking me for the chaos I'd helped create. Owen, you never have to thank me for loving you. 2 years later, Spencer was released from prison. He moved into a small apartment across town and got a job at a construction company. His visits with Owen were no longer supervised, but they remained infrequent and awkward. Julie served her full sentence and moved to another state upon release. She sent Owen birthday cards, but made no effort to rebuild their relationship. Perhaps she understood that her presence would only remind him of the trauma she'd caused. Spencer and I began having coffee once a month at a diner downtown. Our conversations were stilted at first, filled with the weight of everything that had happened, but gradually we found our way to safer topics. Owen's progress in school, my health, Spencer's efforts to rebuild his life. One day, almost 3 years after his arrest, Spencer looked across the table at me and said, "Dad, I need to tell you something." "What's that?" "I'm grateful you turned us in." I nearly choked on my coffee. Grateful? If you hadn't stopped us, we would have kept going until we destroyed everything. The house, Owen's future, your retirement, our family, everything. It felt like destroying the family anyway. No, Dad, you saved what was worth saving. You saved Owen, and you saved yourself. And maybe, eventually, you saved me too. How do you figure that? Prison gave me time to think about who I'd become, about the lies I'd been telling myself and the choices I'd been making. I don't like the man I was, but I'm trying to become someone better. Are you? I think so. I hope so. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the afternoon traffic through the diner window. Dad, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me completely? I thought about Owen's words from years earlier, about forgiveness being something that might come later when the sadness faded. I'm working on it, Spencer. Some days are better than others. That's more than I deserve. Maybe, but it's what I can offer right now. 5 years after the arrests, Owen was 15 and thriving. He'd grown into a thoughtful, responsible teenager who understood more about integrity and consequences than most adults. The trauma of his childhood had marked him, but it hadn't broken him. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Owen said, "Grandpa, I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "I want to study law when I go to college." "Really? Why?" "Because of what happened with Mom and Dad. I want to help people who get taken advantage of by their families." I stopped washing dishes and looked at my grandson, this remarkable young man who'd transformed his pain into purpose. "That's a wonderful goal, Owen." "Do you think I'd be good at it?" "I think you'd be excellent at it." "Will you help me research law schools?" "It would be my honor." That night, after Owen went to bed, I sat in my living room and thought about the stranger who'd handed me an envelope in a cafe 7 years earlier. I never did find out who she was or why she'd risked herself to warn me, but her courage had saved my life, my grandson's future, and possibly even my son's soul. The envelope had contained more than evidence of fraud. It had contained the truth, and while the truth had been painful and destructive in the short term, it had ultimately been liberating. I was no longer a victim of my family's greed. Owen was no longer growing up in a household built on lies and theft. And Spencer, despite everything, was slowly becoming the man I'd always hoped he could be. The stranger's warning, "You'll need this tonight," had proven prophetic in ways she probably never imagined. I'd needed the truth that night, and every night since, to rebuild a life based on honesty instead of manipulation. As I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I thought about Owen's college plans and Spencer's monthly visits, and the quiet, honest life we'd built from the ashes of betrayal. It wasn't the family I'd originally wanted, but it was real in a way the old family never was. And sometimes reality, however painful, is the greatest gift we can receive.